Guests tonight, Joe Piscopo, Denyce Graves, Jerry Nachman, and Indianapolis citizen and Bateman.
Thank you very much. Oh, you're a great crowd, and listen, the first thing I want to do tonight, thank you for the barking, is wish a speedy recovery to Strom Thurmond. You know, we make a lot of jokes about Strom Thurmond. How old is he now? 96 years young. He's in the hospital down there. I'm sure he'll make it out, you know. Nothing can kill him. And they say he's an excellent patient, Strom is, because they say in one place he's comfortable, it's under a sheet. You know, because... Like, kid, Strom, get well, Strom. Now, speaking of the unbelievably old, Gloria Stewart is in the news. You know Gloria Stewart? She was nominated for an Oscar for her performance in Titanic. She was the older woman, the original passenger there in Titanic. She has put out her autobiography, and it contains some rather controversial stuff. She said that she never needed a man because she said, I had and have no guilt when it comes to pleasuring myself. In fact, she said her favorite part of Titanic is the climax, where everybody's looking for the little man in a boat. I tell you, Gloria, she is so old, she's got an A spot. That's how old she... And I don't think I need to know these things. I mean, between the image of Gloria Stewart masturbating and Bob Dolan Viagra, I don't care if I ever get laid again. Yeah. Now, in other news, yesterday the founder of Benihana, you go to Benihana, pled guilty to insider trading. He confessed after the SEC inspectors grilled him right at his table. Right at his table, the founder of Benihana. Please. And finally, a sort of a public service note for tonight. Officials in San Francisco are tracking an outbreak of syphilis that they have traced to the internet, to a chat room on America Online. Can you believe that? A guy apparently was using the chat room to meet people and then have sex with them. He never told them that he had syphilis, but in his defense, his chat name was Hurts to Pee. Okay, let's meet our panel. He is the former editor-in-chief of the New York Post, Jerry Nachman, right over here. Jerry.
Did you miss me?
Back, Jerry. How are you?
Very good.
Our citizen panelist tonight is a Waitron. I don't know what that is. From Indianapolis, Indiana, where she watches us on WRTV. Ann Bateman. Ann. Hi, Ann.
Hello.
How are you? Nice to see you. Thank you so much for dressing up. She and Placido Domingo will be doing Samson and Delilah at the LA Opera, oddly also in their pajamas. This September 8th through the 24th, her new CD is Voce da Donna, Denyce Graves, yeah. Hey, Denyce, thank you for wearing clothes. He's a Saturday Night Live vet and the chairman of the Positive Impact Foundation. He's also the host of Positive Impact TV, Joe Piscopo. My Jersey guy. How are you, Joey? Good to see you. Okay. Joe, where are your pajamas when you're coming on TV? Okay, I want to start up tonight talking about the press a little bit. Now, we've talked a lot about George Bush, but let's talk about the press aspect of that, because George Bush may or may not have taken cocaine back when the Commodores were together, basically, is the issue. I think it's another instance of the press inflating a non-event to an event and then standing back as if they are some sort of dispassionate spectators. And then, of course, they'll do a story about how important the story they created is. I just think back to that New York Magazine cover last year with Clinton that said, impeach the press. I think the politicians are bad, the people are no prize, the press is at the bottom of the barrel. Jerry?
Nice to be back, Bill.
Don't you think the press is in bed with the politicians? Don't you think the whole reason that they're attacking George Bush, now this is just a hypothesis, but don't you think the reason maybe they're attacking George Bush is because now that Republicans have gained control of the House and Senate, maybe the corporations of the world have a vested interest in maintaining control of the political system? So if they beat up on George Bush, if we hear about cocaine for the next year, we won't vote for him. Maybe another Democrat will go into power and it'll be business as usual. You know, it'll be the taxpayer at a rate of $50,000 a year for every man, woman, and child.
Guys, it's so funny. I'm sorry, because Jerry wrote a great article the other day in the New York Times, which pretty much...
Which I may never get to talk about at the slumber party here tonight.
Could you... A great article, Jerry. But
Don't they have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo? Don't you think they do?
What's funny about this whole thing
What's funny about it? I don't find anything funny about it. Does anybody find anything funny about paying $50,000 a year?
Where did we find her? But where was that?
You probably wouldn't know that.
Gee, Joe, and you thought you missed TV.
You're way up in another social strata, but the regular Joe American...
Point taken.
I think what they're doing, and I think which is funny, you have George Bush Sr., probably the most moral, straight-laced, good guy president that we've ever had. I mean, he really was. And then you had George W. at that point on the other side of the White House, you know, snorting and going, hey, where are the broads? You know? That's funny.
The problem is he didn't.
If he was so morally straight, why didn't he balance the budget? Why do we have the deficit of...
That's what we're talking about, young lady.
It's not. That's what I'm talking about, taxes. That's what he's supposed to do.
Can maybe you start a pedicure for a minute and let me answer one thing?
The leader...
Well, I just want to say one thing.
He works for us, and we're all working for him.
Bill, I would love to hear about Jerry's article in the New York Times.
We don't need to do the article. The point I wanted to make was that as bad as the coverage of Clinton was, you would say in the press, there were people there who said, hey, he did this. There is no there, Ashbet. There is no there on the Bush stuff. There is no complainant. If next week someone suggests...
What does that have to do with running the government?
Please let someone else talk. Thank you.
If someone suggests next week that he's a pod person, are we going to do that story? The problem is that there's nobody who said, hey, I was at the Bula Bula Skull and Bones party in 1973 where the Commodores played and I saw W do an 8-ball. Yeah. That the press is covering that story as if there were such an accuser is, I think, a new low.
So you agree with me that the press is the bottom of the barrel?
Well, no, I don't. What I'm going to say is...
What is below the barrel?
Well, what I'm going to say is what Thomas Jefferson said, that given a choice between government without newspapers and newspapers without government, he would prefer the latter. And he's one of your favorite guys.
When our government, when our political system, when our country is going in the toilet through the deficit and through the unbalanced budget, why isn't Bush talking about that?
Honey,
I haven't heard him say 5 words.
I've got the press at the bottom now, but you're pushing it. Okay, I mean, first of all, your idea that somehow we keep the status quo by keeping the Democrats in office as opposed to the radical Republicans is as screwy as your outfit.
They're both corrupt. I'm not saying one over the other. I'm saying they're both corrupt. Why are we focusing on this as the most important issue in an election year when families out here, every person in this audience is paying $50,000 towards the debt?
You're right. People need food and clothing, some more than others.
And they could buy food and clothing if they didn't have to give half their income to the government.
But that's not what Bill's talking about. Is the press? Why is the press nailing George W? Why are
the reason that is, excuse me, is because it's sensational. You know, it's an attention getter. It's something I think that the average Joe Schmo can relate to.
I find it fun.
I think it's
I find it very much amusing. I really do, especially when George Sr. was ambassador to China, and George W.'s in Tiananmen Square going, "Where are the Chinese broads?" You know, I mean, he was just like, it's just funny. It's an amusing piece of
again, to get back to my point about the press, you raised in your article the idea that back when FDR was president, someone was going to take a picture of him getting out of his wheelchair, and the other press guy said, "Kid, we don't do that here."
That's right.
We don't do that here.
That's true, but a few presidents later, the press said, wait a minute, he's got gun malls going in the White House, and he's stooping them, and we're not reporting it. So what's happening is we go flip, and we go flip, and because...
Enough about Ronald Reagan. I've got to take a commercial right.
Join us tomorrow when our guests will be Darrell Hammond, the wrestler formerly known as Sable, Rita Mero, Billy Bragg, and Ariana Huffington.
All right, let's go off of politics and the press and the hope of, okay. So, you know what, Joe, I read an interview with you many times, actually, and I know you have, how old is your boy now?
20 years old.
No, come on.
I swear to you.
Your
Remember
boy?
with that little bit, 20 years old, the pride and joy of my life, my son Joey. He's great.
But all through the years I've read that you said he was your best friend.
Without question.
Okay. I take an objection to that. Now, of course, it's not my child.
Yeah.
So, you know, my objection is limited. But, I mean, the idea of someone being their best friend to their child, I question, because can you be a good parent and also be a best friend at the same time?
You really can, and it's the joy, it's the absolute joy to have your child as your best friend. If you hear a parent say, "My child is..."
For you, what about for him?
No. Well, if you hear a parent say, no. It's like he says, he'll tell you the same thing.
I'm sure he would. It would be great if my dad was my best friend.
If you hear a parent say, "My child is my best friend and lover," then I have a problem with that.
You know, that would be maybe because we're both, maybe because you and I are childless and have somewhat of a reputation of being kid haters. But I agree with you this time as well. I think parents should be parents, not buddies. I think that's part of the problem. My father, who I thought was a real good father, actually was a pretty lousy friend. I didn't want him hanging around with me, especially on weekends, especially on long weekends. He would take me to ball games. He would read a book. If I had to pick him as a friend, I wouldn't have picked him. I would have fired him, but he was a great father. And I found that as life goes on, I want parents to be parents and kids to be kids.
You got to be friends. Nowadays, I'm telling you, it doesn't happen enough. What happens with fathers and sons, I see such competition between fathers and sons, and they really, there's like a kind of a derogatory kind of relationship. My son, I want to tell you, well, we went through tough times.
But that's natural, Joe.
No, but I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be. And although your point is well taken, because Joey and I went through a tough time with the divorce custody thing, didn't have a lot of time together. So when we got together, man, we went for it, you know? And I use him for advice. He is a guy that we hang with.
See, that is the wrongest thing.
No, you use him for advice. You've got. I have to tell you, when I was a kid in Jersey and I was growing up, what I wanted to do was have a son.
Jersey.
I wanted to have a son. But
I'm from New Jersey as well.
I know.
Was your father your friend?
Yeah. My father was my friend, but not like I am with my son Joey.
It probably depends on the relationship.
He really does. We go on the road together. I cannot tell you the joy, and I know parents.
You double date?
In a complicated
we would double date
society,
everything.
in a complicated society like this, you better be your kid's friend. You better be your kid's AIDS counselor. You better be your friend's alcohol advisor. You better be your kid's lung cancer advisor.
Are your kids in trouble, I'm guessing?
No, you guys don't know. You guys, I have to tell you, Bill, and you guys, Jerry, you don't know.
Most kids get addicted to nicotine before the age of 20. Sorry.
Most kids.
Touch you, Joe.
Where does it say that you can touch me in this television program? I would like to know. You can touch me.
Most kids don't get addicted to nicotine before the age of 20.
Well, that's the normal age of addiction is during that window of opportunity. Not most kids. I'm not saying most children get addicted.
You did just say most kids.
I'm saying not most is in a large group, but most people get addicted before the age of 20.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you're going to get addicted, you get addicted young.
Very young.
Right.
I agree with you, too. I think that it is the role of the parent to be the nurturer, the caretaker, the protector, and to parent. And in those special situations, and I believe that it can happen, that
parents don't have time to spend time with their kids.
She wasn't
So they want to be their best friend.
It's not like she was in the middle of a sentence.
You don't. it's hard to say unless you have children. I can't tell you the joy. I just had a little baby
girl. I know, but
girl.
it's not about joy, Joe.
Isn't
it sometimes also about...
Bill? I have a picture of my beautiful baby. Make you sick, Bill Maher. Come on. You're going to throw up, ladies and gentlemen, right now.
Yeah, that's
she?
Yeah.
Isn't she gorgeous? It is so, and I didn't realize what a kick it is when you see that life, that gift of God right before you, and then you can hang with these people later.
Y'all are so worried about Columbine and the cause of
with the intention of your son or your daughter being your best friend. Was that the intention in the beginning?
Everybody gets upset about Columbine, but
touching me
being kids' best friends, 11 teenagers a day die from alcohol.
I
know, but
you know what? You're itching for a pillow fight. I can see it.
We gotta take a break. Okay, we were talking about parents and raising kids and so forth. I read an interesting article recently by a woman who said that her little boy was what she called a Jane girl as opposed to a tomboy. Oh. And she said, why should there be any difference? The little boy apparently was putting on a dress, wearing makeup, mincing around. In other words, where there's a tomboy, that's a girl who, when she's a child, acts like a boy. She said, why should we judge it any differently if the little boy acts like a girl? And I'm interested to ask this panel, especially, if they think that that is a fair comparison.
You shouldn't act any differently, you know. I mean, after we had this little baby with my wife and I, you look at that child, no matter what she or he is like, you're going to...
So if you're little Joey...
It's in the eyes of the parents as it is...
Yeah.
Those outside of the family.
I think
that's what it's about. Yeah. I think, for the most part, the standard is still very different for men and women, and people are not very comfortable with. We are still, I think, a homophobic society.
Well, partly. I think the reason is that we in America love our lesbians, and when we see a tomboy, we think it's somebody in the lesbian academy. And we're going,
the lesbian academy.
Yes, it's like the police academy.
Right, somebody on...
Jerry, you lost me here somewhere.
Yes.
Wasn't sure.
Yes. And?
We think it's like a dyke
this is why I chose the ensemble I'm wearing tonight.
Yes.
To maybe answer that question for everybody. Is how people judge people by appearance, you know? Gay people make up 10% of the population of this country, but we still feel it's okay to bash them,
that's
right?
in dispute.
It's well, whatever.
10%.
What if it's one? You know, this is supposed to be America. It's supposed to be free. Bashing one is too many, but
yes.
People judge people by their color of their skin, by the fact that they're gay, by this, by that, by their socioeconomic class.
Okay, but we're talking about a child putting on a dress. We're talking about a little...
It's very trendy, Bill. It's very trendy.
For children to put on dresses?
For boys. For boys.
To put on dresses is trendy?
Yes, where have you been?
Did you see that?
I don't even know what the color of the sky is in your world.
Why would you...
So I can't tell you...
Why would you challenge... Why on earth would you challenge her on a fashion statement?
What?
Why would you challenge her on a fashion statement?
No, but I don't think this is a trend for little 8-year-old boys to be putting on dresses.
Isn't that what they've always described as the way it began, you know, people...
There was, hello.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Piscopo, nice to meet you. It was a French film, a great French film,
yes.
actually, exactly about that. A little
really?
boy who just felt he lost a chromosome somewhere and felt he wanted to be a girl, and he went to be a girl, and the family coming to grips with that.
But don't you think tomboys, a girl who's a tomboy, they outgrow that, usually. I think it's just, they're not really boys, they're just sort of non-sexual at that age. But like a little boy who puts on a dress...
They might be gay.
They might be, but I think tomboys usually just grow up to be...
It's more acceptable, right? Yeah.
Well, it's acceptable, but I think they also grow out of it. Whereas a little boy putting on a dress, you don't think that that is a little different than a girl? I mean, why do the sexes always have to be the same?
It collides with the national sense of macho.
Sure.
It just seems to be unnatural. And that's why kids who are whatever effeminate means get a lot more heat looking boys than a girl does in a ponytail and sneakers. But I go back to America's love affair with lesbians. they get a break.
You know, I was going to say the same thing,
Jerry, I think you have been listening to a little too much Howard Stern. We will take a break and we'll be right back.
Planning to be in the Los Angeles area and would like free tickets to Politically Incorrect, call 323-575-4321.
All right, we just have 30 seconds. I don't know why I want to ask this question, but the insanity defense, your thoughts?
I think
Vote! Vote! Vote!
I think it's crazy.
The insanity defense.
The insanity defense. Can people just say they're insane and get
I
off?
guess you can get off with murder in
Boy,
this
I
country.
guess you could.
Murder anybody you feel like you'll be out in 10 to 20.
Right, exactly. Can you imagine such a thing?
And
Tomorrow we have
repent it.
Darrell Hammond, the wrestler formerly known as Sable, Rena Mero, Billy Bragg, and Ariana Huffington. Thank you, folks.